All right, so yes, welcome everybody to the NIFTY pre-application webinar. My name is Claire Ratcliffe-Adams. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm an education associate at the Space Science Institute in Boulder, Colorado. And this is where we house the Star Library Network, which you'll hear a little bit more about if you're not a part of that or you're not familiar with that. But we bring all kinds of grant opportunities to libraries who want to get involved with STEM or STEAM in the library. So I'm joined here today with two other presenters. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. So I'll pass it off to Dylan, another StarNet colleague.
Hey everyone, my name is Dylan Connolly. My pronouns are he and they. I am an education specialist at SSI, and I'm going to be handling the icebreaker and some history of StarNet with you today. And I'm really excited to be here sharing all this information about NIFTY with y'all.
You want me to just jump in, Claire? I'm Hillary.
Yeah, and Hillary, that'd be great if you could introduce yourself.
And I'm the external evaluator. I'm a former middle school teacher and director of curriculum. And I'm happy to be here. I've worked on a lot of SciGirls projects over the years, and I've seen the model evolve. We've gotten some very good results. So I'll be the person asking you to help me to collect evidence of your success, but also the nature of your work.
Great, thanks Hillary and Dylan. Yeah, so just before we get into things, a couple of housekeeping items. So when you use the chat, please make sure you're sending your messages to everyone. We'll have to change that in the drop-down options. I think the default goes to just host and panelists, which would just be the three of us. But we want you all to see each other's questions and comments. So just make sure you're addressing your chats to everyone. All right, and also feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. You can say your name, where you're coming from, and yeah, and now we'll begin. So for today, here's just a breakdown of the next hour. Dylan is going to start us off with an icebreaker and a history of the Star Library Network, just who we are and what we do. Then I will talk about the NIFTY project partners. So this is not just a StarNet project. We have several partners. So I just want to let you know a little bit about who you will be applying to work with. And then we'll go into the NIFTY project description, what the big idea is, what we mean by role models, and what libraries will receive if they're accepted into this project, and what they're expected to do. Next, I'll turn it over to Hillary. She's going to talk about the project evaluation. And then finally, we'll kind of dig into the meat and potatoes of today, which is talk about the application itself, the different questions you'll be asked, anything you need to submit as well, and just really let you know, like what we're looking for. This is meant to be as open and transparent as possible. The application, we're not trying to trick you. We want to let you know exactly what we're looking for so that you can fill out a really good competitive application. And with that, I will turn it over to Dylan for an icebreaker.
All right, so since NIFTY is all about making connections between role models and learners and kind of personalizing science, I thought what a fun thing to think about today, about like, what is your favorite STEM or science related anecdote or factoid? Like, so for mine, my favorite is that human beings actually lived closer, even despite the fact that you see a lot of paleo art and drawings of dinosaurs like the one on screen right now. Humans actually lived closer to Tyrannosaurus rex than Stegosaurus did. Stegosaurus was a Jurassic animal, T-Rex late Cretaceous, and actually there's like a 90 million year difference between Stegosaurus and Tyrannosaurus rex, and only about a 66 million year difference between us and Tyrannosaurus rex. So that always boggles my mind, is when you think about how long dinosaurs were on Earth and how much distance there is between all of those different genus and species. It just blows my mind. So if y'all want to put in the chat, what's your favorite pithy go-to like fun science anecdote or factoid that you like and maybe like to share with other people?
Yeah, and as y'all are thinking about that and typing it in the chat, I will share mine. The moon is actually moving away from the earth. And eventually it will be far enough away from the earth that we will no longer have, you will no longer be able to see solar eclipses from the earth. Humans will be long gone by then. It's in another like 600 million years or something like that. But I still find that really fascinating that the moon is actually moving away from us.
I love that, Claire. Zach shared that 43 quintillion, 252 quadrillion, 3 trillion, 274 billion, 489 million, 856,000 is the number of combinations, including the solved state, of the 3x3 Rubik's Cube. That is awesome. I love that that math has been done. I love probability calculations and things like that. So that is great, Zach. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really fantastic. Does anybody else have a factoid they want to put in the chat? It can be anything. Don't feel like it has to be mind-blowing. It can be something simple. Hillary, do you have a go-to factoid or anecdote about STEM or science that you like a lot?
Well, I was going to just piggyback on what Zach said, because I just saw a documentary kind of show on the Rubik's Cube competitions. And I had no idea there were competitions, and it was all these young people, and it's like any other competition. And the world record holder for like 6 years was on the spectrum, and he just was awesome at this, and they kept, moving him forward. So I just thought that was wonderful. The speed
was the name of the I'm gonna have to check that documentary out. That sounds awesome.
It's so good, isn't it, Zach?
I'm always looking my husband is autistic, and we're always looking for what we call neurodivergent date nights, where we so that sounds like a perfect documentary for one of our neurodivergent date nights. I like Justin's factoid. A properly shuffled deck of 52 cards is more than likely unique compared to every other deck of cards. That's fascinating. I love that a lot. Anybody else got a factoid you can share before we decide to move on? I love these. I always love these because I always learn. This is one of my favorite icebreakers because I always learn something fun and just and wacky that, like, it's one of those things that, I love minutia, and that's one of this. I always get good party minutia for when we do this kind of icebreaker. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for sharing out, who shared. The difference between what is the difference between a fjord and a sound?
Well, I was just in New Zealand, and they have the famous Milford Sound and Doubtful Sound, and that's because Cook named them. But actually, a sound they're not sounds, they're fjords, because they were carved by glaciers and then the sea rushed in, whereas a sound is carved by rivers coming down through the mountains. Oh,
every geology professor I had as an undergrad is mad at me right now in spirit because I did not know that already. So my geomorphology professor is shaking her fist at me from the University of Rhode Island. She sent something. I didn't know that, and doubly bad for me, I live on the Puget Sound. I should probably know that.
You should probably check to see if it's a sound or a fjord.
I'm going to now. All right. Well, thanks everyone for that. Let's go ahead and move on to talking a little bit about what StarNet is all about. So StarNet is a network of libraries, largely centered through our online platform at starnetlibraries.org. And we are a community of over 8,000 library professionals interested in STEM and STEAM activities. We do exhibitions, kits for patrons, all sorts of really, really cool stuff. We've got multiple projects going on at all times. Right now we're working on, in addition to the NIFTY project, we have really cool projects about water rights in the Four Corners region. We've got some stuff about the James Webb Space Telescope. We're gearing up a whole bunch of eclipse programming. So even if you're not interested in applying for NIFTY at the end of this webinar, please check out starnetlibraries.org for tons of cool STEM and STEAM resources available for libraries. We get federal funding from NASA and NSF. We provide free trainings, exhibitions, kits, and eclipse classes for the 2023 and 24 eclipses. We also have what I think is one of the coolest things available for informal educators, the STEM Activity Clearinghouse, which has over 500 library vetted STEM activities. If you go there, you can search by age group, by material cost, amount of preparation, and each entry has fully vetted. We've checked these activities are good for libraries. A lot of them have custom implementation guides, teach you how to use them for in-person programming, take and make kits, or virtual programming. We have how-to videos. We link out to other types of resources. We have entries on there for WorldCat listings for related books to every activity. So you can apply, so you can look for books and assemble book lists, or if you're looking to do a science-focused reading challenge this summer, which I know summer reading is always huge, you can look for inspiration for books there. Really can't recommend checking out the Clearinghouse enough. We also have the StarNet community social media site, which is a community practice for librarians to come together. I'm affectionately calling it Spacebook. Works just like Facebook groups. You can join groups for different projects or just general interests. Right now, we're really gearing up the Eclipse group to talk about Eclipse programming for the coming year. And we have STEM resource groups in there. You can interact with StarNet educators. You can interact with people like me and Claire, as well as other librarians. One of the great things about StarNet is that we're not just about providing resources for y'all, but about bringing y'all together so you can share one of the greatest resources with each other, which is each other. So you can find that at community.starnetlibraries.org. It's a completely free social networking site to sign up for, and can't recommend it enough. So that's StarNet. And now I'll turn it back over to Claire to talk a little bit about NIFTY.
All right, so now you've heard a little bit about us, but let's talk about the project. So this project is funded by NASA Science Activation. So if you become a part of this project, you will become a NASA partner because you will be funded by their dollars. We also have several project partners, as I mentioned before. So Twin Cities PBS, or TPT, as we might refer to them, they are the project lead. So they're really the ones organizing all of this. If you haven't heard of them, they are the Emmy award-winning producer of the PBS children's STEM series Sci Girls and Dragonfly TV. And so that piece there, Sci Girls, they come up with all kinds of, not only do they have episodes on TV, but they also have hands-on activities specifically geared for girls and middle school learners. And all of their activities and strategies are based on research that works for youth to learn and engage with STEM. So Sci Girls will be selecting, I think, about 20 partners to also be participating in this project as well. So not only will we have public libraries, but we'll have Sci Girls program educators being a part of the trainings as well. We're also partnering with the National Girls Collaborative. They are another network similar to us, but they bring together all kinds of organizations committed to informing and encouraging girls to pursue careers in STEM. They also will be selecting from their network about 15 to 20 educators to do what you will be doing as well. So it'll be a group of libraries, a group of National Girl Collaborative organizations, and Sci Girl organizations all together in this beautiful mix of informal education to encourage girls and other historically excluded genders in STEM to be matched up with NASA role models. We're also partnered with the NASA Langley Research Center. They are going to be leading the recruitment efforts for NASA role models, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then finally, technology for learning. So that is Hillary. She is our independent evaluator who will be measuring the collaboration between programs and role models. And I will let her talk more about that a little bit later. So what is the NIFTY big idea? So again, that acronym is NASA Inspires Futures for Tomorrow's Youth. And with this project, we are addressing the ongoing need to engage more youth in STEM and NASA career pathways with a critical focus on youth of color and specifically girls and other genders historically excluded in STEM. And I do use that term historically excluded. You might have heard the term underrepresented, which is a fine term, but we try to, historically excluded kind of gets a little more specific into the barriers that some folks have been left out of opportunities to pursue these career pathways in science, technology, engineering, and math. And the way that we are trying to connect those youth is by providing opportunities to interact with and learn from diverse NASA role models. So we will be doing the matchmaking for you. We will be connecting you with role models from different research centers across the country to give youth at your library an opportunity to see themselves represented in STEM professions. So what do we mean by role model? There's all different kinds of definitions out there for what a role model can be. You can kind of start with this kind of basic definition of, an individual who can positively shape a learner by acting as a successful exemplar. So oftentimes you folks are, role models to the kids in your community, to the families in your community. However, in this project, we are specifically defining role models as NASA-funded STEM professionals from research centers across the country who are subject matter experts in their STEM fields. So we are going to be working with subject matter experts from diverse backgrounds, diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, diverse gender identity backgrounds, and that will include men as well. But, we are wanting to have a focus to really to highlight women in these fields. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. But the whole big idea kind of behind this is you cannot be what you cannot see. So we're trying to really hook youth up with folks who look like them doing these great careers who are NASA funded and going on the STEM pathway. So who are we trying to reach? We are looking for public libraries in California, Minnesota, Tennessee, and Arizona. So if you found yourself in this webinar and you're not from one of those 4 states, unfortunately, we are only selecting libraries from these states. The reason for that being a couple of reasons. StarNet does have some strong connections with the state libraries of these 4 states. So it kind of helps us to select libraries that will demonstrate the capacity to do what we need them to do for the project. Also, these are areas where we do have some of those NASA research centers. So we are trying to hook these libraries up with in-person role models as well as virtual. We do understand that with the ongoing pandemic, in-person programming might not always be available. So virtual is fine as well. But we do want to connect you with role models. We are trying to reach youth ages 10 to 14. So we are looking at that middle school age group. And that's because that tends to be an age where you start to really develop a meaningful STEM identity or not. And there could be many reasons for why they could see themselves in STEM or not see themselves in STEM. So we're focusing on this age group. And again, with a critical focus on groups historically excluded in STEM. In this program, we are looking for libraries that are serving Hispanic or Latino communities. However, if you have strong connections to other groups historically excluded in STEM, Black, Indigenous, other people of color, put that in your application. Even if you're not necessarily serving large Hispanic populations, you can make your case for who you are serving. And again, just go back to that, we are looking to work with libraries who have plans to reach historically excluded genders in STEM. So that includes cis girls, trans youth, gender nonconforming, or non-binary youth. We are also all of these programs are open and welcoming to boys as well. We are not excluding them at all. Same with the role models, we will have male role models as well. But the reason why we have that critical focus is the representation of women in STEM, and again, that's science, technology, engineering, and math, really varies across occupations. So women have, in recent years, started to be have increasing numbers in STEM professions. It's not even across that STEM career pathway. So if you look at this chart here from the Pew Research Center, you can see that health-related jobs 74% of women make up health-related jobs. So we are seeing women a lot more in these areas, in health-related jobs such as doctors, dental hygienists, registered nurses. There is a good representation of women in these fields. But as you kind of go down this chart, you see that the percentage really drops, going down to 47% in math jobs, and even lower in computer jobs at only 25%. In engineering jobs, women only make up 15% of the workforce. So there still is this discrepancy about gender in STEM. So that's why for this project, we really are trying to focus on engaging girls at that young age, at that middle school age, to start to develop a strong STEM identity where they can see themselves following this pathway. All right, so what will you receive if you are selected to be a part of NIFTY? So we are selecting 15 libraries, and those libraries will receive professional development for 2 staff per library, and that entails 2 virtual workshops with follow-up virtual support, such as check-in calls and webinars. Those libraries will also receive STEM activities and materials to support programs. So that includes not only hands-on activities, but also social media toolkits, promotional materials, ways for you to really engage your community and promote those programs. You will also receive support in connecting with NASA role models. As I said, we will be a matchmaker for you. There will be several different ways that we are right now in development to connect you with those role models, to either come in person and we will provide the funding to get them there, or ways that you can interact with them virtually in your programs. Libraries will also receive a $5,000 stipend. So here are some of the requirements. This is a little bit of a timeline here, but there's kind of 2 rounds for this project. So there's a starting in June 2023, libraries selected for NIFTY are required to attend a virtual professional development workshop. That's where we will go over all of the materials, training on gender equitable instructional strategies, all kinds of great stuff like that. And then from July through December 2023, that's round 1 of programs. So libraries are required to implement 10 hours of NASA-themed STEM programs based on the training you received in June, with at least 1 role model to engage with the youth and families in your program. So 10 hours, what does that look like? It's really up to you. We know that each library does things differently. So that could be, just as an example, a 1-hour evening program that runs for 10 weeks, aimed for middle school youth and their families. Or, if you are doing summer camps, that could be, 5 days in a row of 2-hour-long programs, or that could be a weekend program that runs for 2 hours for 5 weeks. So it's really whatever works for you. You can sort that out yourself, but you will be provided with enough materials to run 10 hours. Starting in November 2024, we kind of start that whole process over again. We will do another round of virtual development training for you for 2 staff at your library, and then another round of programs. So from January to June 2025, again, you will be asked to implement 10 hours of NASA-themed STEM programs with at least 1 role model with the youth and families in your programs. So I say that at least 1 role model. If you want to do more, awesome. Another part of this project is, alongside, we will be training you. We will also be training the role models on how to engage in community programs in libraries. So we will have, we're training, upwards of, I think, 50 different role models to connect with programs. So if you want more than 1 role model, or after you've connected with our NASA role model, if you want to keep that going and you have local role models, like a local college professor or something like that, you're more than welcome to continue this model. But we do require one role model to be in those rounds of programs. And finally, you will be required to participate in all evaluation activities. So that will include evaluation of yourself, the families you're working with, and the youth. And so I am now going to pass it over to Dr. Hillary Davis to talk about what that evaluation will look like.
Hello again. You probably all have participated in various kinds of evaluations. This one is really to determine what works. So I like to do two different things to provide evidence to the funder. One is to really characterize what you do, because as Claire has said, you have lots of options here to do what has been successful at your site. And so I just finished an evaluation of Sci Girls in Space, and I did interviews with each site, and I was able to characterize what they did and how they did it and with whom. And that just begins to tell the story. And then we do surveys. So next slide. You'll see there's a number of things. First of all, we would like to do a needs assessment. Like, what do you need? Once you're selected, what do you need to be successful? So you will have more information at that point. You'll see more. You're learning about the requirements now. So what do you need to be successful? And that is good practice, because it tells the staff what they need to do to support you. Then after you do the professional development this summer, and then in a couple of years, the second level of it, then there'll be a survey about that. And that, of course, is to see, was it useful to you, and what was useful about it, and does it help prepare you to actually implement the program? And then at the end of each implementation, your 10 hours, and again, the 10 hours could be 10 hours over 10 weeks, or it could be 3 Saturdays of 3.5 hours, or, it could, whatever makes sense to you in terms of your population and who you serve and what will draw them in and what will be most valuable to them. And then we want you to administer a family survey and a youth survey at the end of each round of your NASA themed STEM programs. So this is critically important to us to hear from the parents what they heard from their kids, and we need to hear from the youth. I know this is super hard to do because it can be awkward, but I will make something that's friendly, and you can do it. I like it if you hand it out on paper and then just send me scans or pictures of it, because that way you can see who did it and make sure they all do it, and you can give them stickers or something else. And I'm sure we can get some things like that from NASA to reward people for giving us feedback. And if you do it right then, like at the last session, then we're more likely to get it. But that's just like super important to NASA in this case. Okay, next slide. All right. So there'll be 3 sites in 2023 and 3 sites in 2025 that will invite me, hopefully, to come and see what you do and just to get an even more hands-on sense of the work. So if you would like to have me come, I can also I wouldn't be a role model for your programming, but I would hope you would introduce me. And I was a teacher, and my doctorate's actually in cognitive science. And so kids find that pretty interesting these days, because it's all about learning and how people learn and how they think. So this will be the in-depth studies that I do in this case. So please invite me. Next slide. I think that might be it, Claire.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that is it. But we did have a question for you.
Okay.
Will the surveys be provided in multiple languages?
If you need them, yes. Yeah, great. That's fine. And we may need your help in identifying a translator, but we may have some too that we can tap in SciEc. So, but it's very big. So what language were you interested in? Spanish?
While we wait for Sylvia to respond, the question, Sylvia, was what
we'll put it
what
in the
language
needs assessment.
Yeah, we can find that out in the needs assessment. We do have an in-house Spanish translator at StarNet. So at a minimum, it would be available in English and Spanish.
Great.
And all of the educational materials will be provided in English and Spanish as well.
Yeah. And then I saw the question, it wasn't for me, but about role models, because I'll also be surveying the role models, just like I did on the one I just finished for Sky Girls in Space. And it's really a wonderful thing. You know, I mean, it's just, they really enjoy it. And they really love questions. They love working collaboratively with the person on site. Some of them adopt their sites, some of the sites adopt the mentors. So that really is up to you. But the program just, it's good practice, again, just to have a minimum so everybody knows what they really need to do. But I would say at least 40% of the sites that were involved in the last program had mentors way more often than once. And some of them were semester-long programs, but the kids just loved it. And so they found more local ones and they just included them in a lot of their programming. So that's why we also have the programming. So you can do it without the role models, or you can use the role models and integrate it, or you can, one site actually did an activity, but then they found role models that fit it. Another site just had it as kind of like a snippet for every session, and you can use FabFems, for instance. You can use a lot of the videos on the Sky Girls site, just so they continue to have a sense of the range of possibilities in STEM.
Yeah. And I just want to go back to that question for those watching the recording. Someone asked in the chat, does that one role model that's required need to be present at all 10 hours of programming? Absolutely not. That's asking way too much for the role model and for you to coordinate that. We just want at least one point of contact where the youth in those programs will be able to interact with a role model. So as an example, if you're running an evening program for 1 hour for 10 weeks, as long as one of those programs includes a role model, that would satisfy that requirement. Of course, you can absolutely go above and beyond that. As Hillary said, it's such a meaningful, it could be such a meaningful interaction for those kids to have a role model there. So if you want more, work with us. We will work to help match you up. But we need one point of contact where that role model can interact with your kids. So the applications, yes, let's talk about that. They are currently open. And Dylan, if you could drop the link bank in the chat, you can find the link to the application in that, as well as just a copy of the application questions. So you can look at those questions before you go into the link to apply. But the due date is February 10th, 2023. The application is via a SurveyMonkey link, and it will ask you for your library information, community demographic information, because again, we're trying to see if you are serving those groups historically excluded in STEM. We are asking questions about your library capacity. We want to make sure that you can demonstrate you have the capacity to run 2 rounds of 10 hours of programs. It's kind of a lot. So we want to make sure that you have the capacity to do that. There are 3 narrative questions, which I will get into. I'll do a deep dive into those in just a moment. And a letter of support is required. This is a letter of support from your library director, or if you are a really small library, if you have a different title for that, that's okay. But the point of that is just to make sure that since this is a multi-year project, if you are a children's librarian applying for this, we want to just make sure that your library administration, or at least your library director, knows that you are applying for this, and that we can get a guarantee that your library will commit to this over the course of the project, even if there's turnover. So yeah, a letter of support from your library director just stating, hey, we're aware of this project, we're aware of the requirements, and we are committed to doing it as a library. So there are 3 narrative questions. Narrative question number 1 is all about STEM programming. And there's 2 parts to this. We do understand STEM might not be something you've done before, and we still would love to hear from you. So if you have done experience with STEM, this is the question. And I've kind of highlighted the bulk of what we're looking for. So describe how your organization has developed or implemented science, technology, engineering, and math programming, including any programs on space science. So we're really look at this highlighted part here. We're really wanting to see what you have done already and what you are hoping to do in the future with STEM. So what STEM related programs or topics have you offered to your community and for what age groups? And then that second part, how will participating in this project further your organization's goals in STEM education? So make sure you're really addressing what you've done and where you're hoping this project will take you to the next level in STEM. That will be would be a complete answer. Now, if you have not done STEM before, there's also this prompt for you. So if you haven't offered STEM before, we want to know what interests you about STEM in the library, what topics you would like to explore with your community, and how participating in this project would build your library's capacity to offer STEM programming. Narrative question number 2 is all about the role models. So again, we're kind of looking at like what you've done with this and where this project will take you. So describe your organization's interest in inviting NASA STEM role models to your programs. Have you had opportunities to incorporate role models such as subject matter experts, scientists, or other guest speakers in youth programming before? And then, so that's kind of that's the first part. If you've done it before, what have you done? And if you haven't, why does this interest you? The next 2 sections are, how do you think access to NASA role models will impact your community? So I want you to think about your community as a whole as the second part of this question. And then finally, please describe how access to diverse STEM role models may benefit the youth. So that, you have the community, please address that. And then this last part, really talk about the youth. How will youth having access to role models benefit them, especially girls and other historically excluded genders in STEM, which includes cis girls, trans youth, gender nonconforming, and or non-binary youth. And the third narrative question is your experience and your strategic plans for reaching diverse communities. So there's really 2 parts here. Discuss your plans for engaging members of the community who are historically excluded in STEM fields, specifically Hispanic or Latino communities, and girls and other historically excluded genders in STEM. And then we would like you to identify and describe at least two community partnerships you can utilize to reach these communities. So just keep in mind there's these 2 parts. If we receive an application and all they do is say, hey, we have a partnership with the local Chamber of Commerce and the Girl Scouts, and that all you do is identify the partnerships, but you don't discuss your plans for how you will work with those partnerships, you will be scored a little bit lower. So make sure you're really including how you are planning to engage these diverse communities, and also who you can utilize to reach those communities. So those are the 3 narrative questions. And then finally, I went over this a little bit, but we are requiring 1 supporting material, and that's just a letter of support. So please provide a brief letter of support from your library leadership, such as the library director, indicating an awareness and commitment to the NIFTY project and requirements. If you're the one applying and you are a library director, easy. Just type out a really quick letter and attach it to your application. So that can come from you. If you are the library director, this letter can come from you. If you are not the library director of your library, make sure you talk with them and get a letter that you can attach to your application. So that's the application. As I said, you can access the SurveyMonkey link that will take you to the application in the link bank that Dylan dropped in the chat. If you're not ready to go into the SurveyMonkey and start typing out your answers, there's a link to just the application questions. So you can look at that before you fill out your survey. Also included in that link bank that Dylan put in the chat is the rubric that we are going to be using to score your applications. So I highly encourage you to check that out. As you're filling out the applications, make sure you're hitting all of the things in the rubric to really ensure you have a strong application. And successful applicants will have clear plans to reach groups historically excluded in STEM fields. And again, we are going to be prioritizing groups that work closely with Hispanic communities. But if you are in a community and you serve other groups, such as lower income families, put that in your application, really make that case for why your community needs this support. Successful applicants will also show that they have the capacity to run 2 rounds of programs of 10 hours each with 10 youth ages 9 to 14 and their families. So there are some questions in there that talk about how many youth you typically have at programs. And that's the number we're looking for. We're looking for 10 youth in the programs that you run. All right, so that is the rundown of this project, of the evaluation requirements and the application. So now we're just here to answer your questions. We've already had a couple of really great ones in the chat, but we'll stick around. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat and we'd love to answer them. Does the $5,000 stipend get dispersed all at once? That's a really great question. Typically, no. What we've done with other projects is once you do the evaluation, like the pre-survey, you'll receive some of that money. After the training, you'll receive a big chunk of it so that you can run your programs. And so we'll be dispersing it as you kind of hit different checkpoints. We haven't come up with that timeline yet, so I can't be more specific than that. But that's typically how we disperse that money. Can you give us an idea of what type of programs we will be trained on? Yeah, that's a great question. So I think if you are familiar with the SciGirls activities, I don't know, Dylan, if you want to find just scigirlsconnect.org, you can drop that in there. That gives you an idea. There's all kinds of different STEM topics that there are activities available in. For this one, I think a lot of them will be, some of them will be space themed, like NASA space themed. Yeah, check out scigirlsconnect.org. There's engineering activities where, you get your kids to work collaboratively on different engineering design challenges. There is biology role models. So there's activities all about birds and marine biology and all kinds of stuff like that. So check out that link that Dylan dropped in and you can see the different topics that you'll be trained on. All right. Are families expected to attend every session, or is this focused specifically on the 10 to 14-year-old youth? Families are absolutely encouraged to attend. They don't have to be there, but we do see this as somewhat of a multi-generational, like we will make sure that there are materials that will be able to engage families as well as the 10 to 14-year-old kiddos. But the main focus will be on ensuring that there's materials that is engaging to middle school youth. Can we apply under our friend of the library, or does it have to be direct via the public library? It is easier through the friends for grants. That is a really great question. I would, if it's easier to do that, as long as you have Yeah, I'm not really sure the answer to that. That's a really good question, Yvette. Here, I'm going to put my email in the chat. Send me that question and I will talk with TPT, who's the lead of the project, just to kind of see like what that might look like. Yeah, send me an email and we'll talk offline about that. Great question. All right. So, and Sylvia, kind of going back to that same, like how you interested in that family component. Youth don't always come to the library with their adults, and that's okay. I think, you know, if you just have youth there, that's fine, but we want to make sure, you know, families are welcome to come. Younger siblings, they're welcome to be there. Boys, they're welcome to be there. You know, we're encouraging this to be an inclusive environment. But I think, you know, just the activities will be designed for that 11 to 14 age range. And when will this recording be available? So that link bank that Dylan put in the chat, I will be updating that basically as soon as I have this uploaded to our YouTube channel. So you can expect it. Check that link again tomorrow. You know, by tomorrow midday, I will have updated it, and the recording will be in that link bank. Yeah, typically 24 hours gives me enough time to upload it. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for joining. I'm really excited to read your applications. You are asking really phenomenal questions. I'll put my email in the chat just one more time. If you have more questions, definitely send me an email. I'd be happy to set up a meeting to talk through some of these things as well. So yeah, we want to make this, again, transparent. We want to make this easy for you. I'm always happy to jump on an email or set up a meeting to talk through any more questions that anyone has. So thank you, Hillary and Dylan, for presenting with me. And I think unless anyone has any more questions, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And I look forward to seeing your applications.
Thanks for joining us all.